Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Catherine Berry. I'm an acupuncturist and a mother of two. We have a fantastic webinar for you today, presented by Jollette Jai from Peace of Mind Parenting, called Inside Your Child's Brain. Now, this might be of interest to you if you're a parent, but it's also fascinating as a practitioner to understand our patients as parents rather than just seeing them as individuals. Jollette takes us through how to see our patients within their family context and how to help them with issues they may be having with parenting. So I'd now like to introduce you to Jollette. Jollette Jai is a writer, speaker and parent educator in nonviolent education and parenting. She's committed to helping parents raise children who are caring and confident. A passionate mum herself and the founder of Peace of Mind Parenting, Jollette supports parents to align themselves to become conscious parents who take care of their own needs while raising a child who is aware, connected and communicative. This fantastic webinar is yours to enjoy.
So we are going inside your child's brain today. Marianne Williamson said it great. She said that there's no single effort more radical in its potential for saving the world than a transformation of the way we raise our children. So we all know, as health professionals and as people, that there are great things that our next generation, that our kids are going to do. And we all know that we can affect a lot of change in the world. And how I see this is that the change is not going to happen in our children unless it first happens within ourselves as parents. So whether you're a parent or whether you have patients with children, today's talk is for you. And it's for you if you've ever wondered how a child's brain is being affected by a parent's parenting style. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to take a look inside a child's brain and understand what's really going on in their brain and how your patients or how you can become a better parent just by knowing this information. So we're here to empower your patients with kids and you as a parent to deeply connect with yourself, your family, and your child. We hear so many stories from around the world from parents today who are struggling at connecting with their child, or they can't get their child to do what they want them to do, and they feel this disconnection. They feel their children are almost slipping away, and especially in the digital age, you might notice this. So what we're here to do today is to help your patients with kids to reconnect with their child. We're here to help them grow that relationship with their child so that their child feels safe and secure to come to the parent with anything, and that this is really the basis of a child's feelings of self-worth and confidence. So we envision our next generation to be confident, caring, and conscious leaders in their own lives who constantly strive to better themselves and their community and the difference that they make to the world at large. Yet our next generation cannot do this without parents. So let's talk about parenting. Parenting. So we're going to talk today about parenting, my favorite subject. Let's first talk about what parents often think about parenting before they even have kids. So for those parents who are on the line, or if you notice that your patients are parents, you have a lot of parents as patients, which we tend to have, you may have had this vision for yourself. So just imagine before you had kids, and we think of parenting in this kind of idealistic way. So you're a mom or you're a dad, but if you're a mom and you're about to give birth and you have that wonderful new being growing in your belly and you're excited and this is a whole new life you're taking on, and it's going to be so fulfilling, we think, as parents. And we have this belief that we're just going to love our kids all the time and they're going to love us in return. And we just imagine that this relationship is just going to be oh so fulfilling. And we may even think that parenting is going to improve the relationship that we have with our spouse or our partner. And then we imagine a family where there are these happy kids and we're happy parents and how we're going to have so much fun with them while we're raising them. And some of these things are indeed true. And sometimes there's another story happening. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So parenting the real story. So there's this whole other side of parenting that people are just not talking about. And I call this the real story. And it's the part that's not too pretty. Yet there's this whole other piece to parenting that nobody talks about too much. It's the part that happens behind closed doors, when children are really upset and when parents just don't know what to do. So it's the part that has parents pulling their hair out. You might see your patients come in and they're really tired and you just don't know what to do, and they've had an awful night with their kids. It has parents struggling with sleepless nights and sometimes even arguments with their spouse. And we all go through this. As parents, we all go through this, and it's happening globally. And I don't know of one parent who doesn't struggle with parenting, with being a parent. And we all think that we're alone in parenting, and we're not. So I'm here today to expose the real story about your child's brain and your child's emotions. And if you have patience with children, then you'll learn today what's really going on in the child's brain and how to help that parent effectively. So I'm here to talk about the real story behind what's really happening when any parent uses or makes the choice to use punishments or consequences to control their child's behavior. And I'm here to let you know that if you're a parent and you're struggling in any way, then you're not alone. So today's talk is for you if you find yourself yelling at your kids and you really don't want to, or you can't get your kid to do what you want them to do, or maybe you're using consequences and punishments and they're working in the moment, but your kids keep misbehaving and you sense the disconnection from this, and your kids aren't really on the same page. Maybe your kids aren't listening to you. Maybe your kids aren't cooperating with you. Can't seem to get your kids what you want them to do, and your kids are being unruly, and you're tired of hearing no over and over again, and you're tired of playing policeman every day, and you're tired of all the fighting in your home. You know in your heart that there's a better way to do this, but you don't know what that is. So you'll receive the information today that's going to bring more peace and calm into your home, or more peace and calm into your patients' homes. And you're going to learn tools for yourself and your patients so that you will be able to better navigate the ups and downs that come with parenting, and you have a better ability to bring your best self to your kids. Isn't that what we all want? We didn't just have kids just to have kids. We had kids so that we could bring our best to our kids, so that they can learn from us as parents. And today you'll learn a way to move from frustration, from anger, from disconnection, to this profound connection between you and your child that's based on mutual respect. And funny enough, it all begins with your child's brain. So let's take a little trip inside your child's brain. When a baby is born, a baby is actually born with 200 billion brain cells. Can you believe that? Amazing, huh? 200 billion brain cells. So think about it. Your baby's brain is actually 25% of its adult brain. So when a baby's born, the human brain is 25% of what it's actually going to be. And it has a while to grow. So if a baby's brain were developed, then the baby wouldn't be able to come out of the mom because its head would be too big. So there's a huge amount of brain growth that happens in a child's first 5 years of life. And actually, 90% of the growth of the human brain happens in the first 5 years of life. The brain keeps continuing to grow throughout the lifespan, but most of that growth happens in those first 5 years of life. So how important do you think the first 5 years of a child's life is? Now there's research in brain science and brain development, and we understand now just how important the connection is between the parent and the child. And here's the part that gets really interesting. Here's where I get very excited, because the development of the child's brain happens when connections are made between the cells. And I'll say it again. The development of the child's brain happens when connections are made between the cells. And these connections happen as a result of all the interactions that the child has with you as their parent. So whether the connections are positive or negative, you are literally shaping your child's brain. You're helping to sculpt your child's brain based on the interactions that you're having with him. So you're affecting your child's brain development. That's going to affect your child for the rest of his life by the way that you choose to connect or not connect with your child. So there's no judgment here. We're just taking a look. How can you best connect with your child so that you can give them the best brain juice to affect their self-esteem and self-worth for the rest of their lives? So it's mainly through connection with the parent that a child's brain grows, or a caregiver. Now that's a big responsibility. We hear this and we go, oh my God, how have I been parenting? What have I been doing with my child? And a lot of people, a lot of parents at this point, when you share this information, think, they start to feel guilty or they start to really judge themselves. And what I want you to know here is a huge discovery in brain science, which is called neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity just means that the brain can grow and change at any time. So the brain can grow and change at any time. And that's what we tell parents who come to us, saying, I've hit my child and there's been this huge rupture in our relationship and I don't really know what to do. I don't know how to reach my child anymore. Well, the good news is that the brain can grow and change at any time. So you can start putting these tools into place today, tools of connection and cooperation, so that your child will know that safety and security right now, and the brain will start, those connections will start happening between the synapses right now, today, so that you'll be creating new neural pathways today. So we'll talk a little bit more about this in this presentation, but I just want you to know right now that the brain can grow and change, so there's no judgment here. A parent can start right now. So let's talk a little bit about where we've come from. We've actually come from a place of what we call dominant parenting methods. So what kind of parenting have we all been used to throughout history? We've all been used to a dominant parenting style. And a dominant parenting style is all about control. It's about having control over another person, having control over a child. Because we didn't know how, parents throughout history did not know how to control their kids. And the quickest way to control your child, or to get your child to do what you really want them to do, to get them to behave the way that you really want them to behave, is to control them. And so that's been the quickest way, has been through control. And it's everywhere. We see the dominant paradigm everywhere. We see control everywhere. We'll see it in our schools. We'll see it in our prisons. We'll see it in our legislature. We'll see it in the government. We'll see it everywhere. We see this is the method of communication to get someone, or for someone to behave, for someone to do what you want them to do. And I don't know one person who hasn't experienced parenting in some way, experience this kind of parenting, this kind of dominant style of parenting in some way. And this has been affecting us for generations. So we're going to talk today how this is harmful to you, to your child, if your patients have children, how this is harming them, and what's going on inside of the child's brain when they're doing this. So there's the dominant parenting method. This could be blame, consequences, punishments, shame, manipulation. And then there's the child's reaction, as it appears from their outward behavior. So when a parent is punishing, or when a parent deals consequences, or when a parent is yelling or screaming, or when a parent uses manipulation, then a child will react. And a child will either cry, or they'll resist, or they'll obey, And then underneath that obeyance, what's happening underneath it? There could be a hidden resentment underneath there that only comes out afterwards. Or the child might withdraw. And all of these things may not manifest in your child until later in life. So we may not see how this is actually affecting your child until later in life. So that's your child's outward reaction. Now let's take a look at what's going on inside of the brain, the biological effects of control. What's going on inside of your child's brain when you're trying to control your child, or a parent is trying to control a child, or using this dominant style of parenting. So many of us were raised with consequences and punishments. We just were. And simply because our parents didn't have any other way to get us to do what they wanted us to do. So consequences and punishments are not bad or wrong. These things work. They will get your child, or they'll get a child to stop doing what you don't want him or her to do. But the missing part of these solutions is at what cost? At what cost are we using these solutions? So current research now shows that punishment and using other tools of the dominant paradigm have been known to affect your child's personality development, their brain development, and their relationship with the parent over the course of his or her life. And we see this every day because we talk with parents and we train parents and we teach parents every day. So what we see in parents is that there's this deep hurt that's happened in their past when they were parented in the dominant style of parenting, that they didn't feel heard, they didn't feel accepted, they didn't really feel loved. And these things are very deep. And until we become parents ourselves, or until you have a patient who's a parent, they really couldn't have tapped into this deep hurt before. Possibly they could have, but when you become a parent, that hurt and that pain from the past and having used or having experienced any dominant parenting methods comes up rather quickly. And it comes up when our children push our buttons, and we'll talk a little bit more about that today. So many studies are now revealing what's actually going on inside of the brain when a child is punished. So there was a very popular study in 2010 done by Gartrell, and they were saying that the current research on brain development reflected the foresightedness of educators and psychologists from Montessori to Piaget to Maslow to Erickson, that when conflicts occur, teachers should teach. This was a study on teachers, but teachers should teach, not punish, because punishment causes emotional stress. And that's what they found, that punishment causes emotional stress. So emotional stress can be externalized, and you'll see this in your child's emotional reaction, and you may notice this, especially in a child between the ages of 0 to 7, that if something very small or insignificant, seemingly insignificant happens, like they may drop something on the floor, or they may have tied their shoes wrong, or they may have put their sweater on wrong, then they'll have this huge emotional reaction to it. So that's how it shows up when it's externalized, their emotional stress. When the parent is punishing or when the parent is yelling, you'll see how the emotional stress is with the child. Or you'll see how the child reacts to that emotional stress. And you'll see this in your child's emotional reaction that may not show up as an immediate emotional reaction, but it may show up as something that they become really quiet or they withdraw. And it can be internalized. And you may notice that your child withdraws or neglects you, maybe becomes quiet. And this is very, very subtle. So if you're a parent and you're on the line now, I want you to get started today with noticing just how your child is affected emotionally whenever you use consequences or punishments. And if you're a healthcare practitioner and you have patients who are parents, you can ask them to start to notice this as well. So in order to talk about the long-term effects of emotional stress, we need to take a peek into the way your brain and your child's brain works. So we need to turn to the brain. So real simply, there are three areas of the brain. There's the lower area, which is your survival center. This is your fight, flight, or freeze. And this is really your animal instinct. This is a really great thing that we have this lower area of our brain. And then there's the middle area. And the middle area of your brain is the emotional center. It's all about feelings, 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 more feelings. And if you have a child between the ages of 0 to 7, this is the part of the brain that is in the most rapid development. So if you do see these big emotional reactions, whether you're punishing or whether your child just ties his shoes wrong, whatever it is, then your child developmentally is in the perfect place. They're exactly where they need to be because this is the part of the brain that's developing right now. And so that emotional center is developing and they're living in that emotional center of their brain. So the emotional center also houses what's called the amygdala. So this is really, if your child is between the ages of 0 to 7, this is where your child is living most of the time. And that's the middle area of the brain. Now let's move to the higher area of the brain. So the higher area of the brain is hopefully what most of us know as practitioners and as parents. This is the part, this is our reasoning part of our brain. This is our logical part of our brain. This is where empathy lives. This is also called the neocortex or frontal lobes. It's where we make decisions from. It's kind of that part where we're calm and collected and we're making really good decisions from this part of our brain. This is where reason and rational thought live, where problem solving lives. And this also is where a child's ability to manage themselves and engage in memory activity and learning. And so this part of the brain, this higher area of the brain, starts to really develop when a child is 7 years old. And why this becomes so important is when a child gets stressed. So here's what we're going to look at, these three areas of the brain when a child becomes stressed. So when a child is stressed, they have a tantrum, maybe you've punished them, and they're emotionally charged, they've just been through an emotionally charged moment, then the higher area of the brain shuts down. And the middle area, or the lower area, actually the middle and the lower areas of the brain become stimulated. And they're operating only from that fight, flight, or freeze, that lower area, and that emotional center. And guess what? The same thing happens for you. So the same thing is happening. When you get emotionally stressed, your brain does the same thing. That front area of the brain shuts down. And for all intents and purposes, you are parenting or you are being with somebody else from that fight, flight, or freeze, from that lower area, from that survival center, and from your emotions. So our goal is to really help your child and you to bring that higher area back online. We want to bring that higher area of the brain back online. So punishing to stop a child's behavior keeps the child's stress levels high, and it makes that executive functioning, or it makes that healthy functioning of the higher level of the brain more difficult to learn. So when your child is really stressed because you've punished them, then we're actually impeding their learning skills. Punishing is keeping them in a high stress situation. And it actually has been found to be detrimental to the development of that healthy executive functioning, the development of that front part of the brain. So that's why it's so important to actually look at what we're doing now in parenting. Why we're using the dominant style of parenting, and how we can shift to a new paradigm that will really encourage a healthy development of your child's brain. So we see parents all the time, and we see parents who have yelled or actually have gotten really upset with their children. And at no fault to them, parenting is super challenging. And sometimes we just don't know what to do. So when we see this, I had a client the other day, and she had been on the playground with her child. And her child was really upset because another child wouldn't share. And this happens a lot. And so he came over to his mom. He was 3.5 years old. Came over to his mom, and he started hitting and punching his mom. And her natural reaction before she switched her style of parenting, so when she was still in her dominant style of parenting, would have been to punish him, would have been to grab his wrist really strongly, would have been something like that. And we know now that what would have happened in his brain is that he would have had a lot of emotional stress from that reaction. Instead, what this mom chose to do was because she had been aware of this new shift in parenting, she chose to listen to him and to help him calm down so that he could get that front part of his brain back online. So by talking with him and by using methods to help him calm down, which we'll talk about today, she was able to model empathy, and she was able to model true caring. And so what's happening in her child's brain now is that with that modeling, there are mirror neurons. And so that child is getting to actually experience what it is to have somebody truly care in those deep emotional moments. And that is huge for a child. And it's not just huge because it's a nice thing to do. It's huge because biologically, the mirror neurons in the brain are modeling what the parent's mirror neuron are modeling what the neurons in the parent are doing as well. So your child will model what you do, how you parent, especially when emotions run high. They're really watching what you're doing in those moments. So we are really emotionally challenged a lot of the time. And the funny thing about it is that it is actually the greatest opportunity for our children to connect deeply with us. And it's the greatest opportunity for us to connect deeply with our children throughout those emotional, highly charged emotional moments. So we think of them as temper tantrums, or you may have seen this in your office, that parents come in and they're really stressed and they're yelling at their kids, or their kids are having tantrums. It is that moment that is has the greatest opportunity to be the most deeply connecting moment for that child and for that parent, that's going to create safety and security and a high sense of self-esteem for that child, if the parent chooses to take it on. So when we look into our past, we think about these moments, and we think about, what did I learn from my mom when she was very stressed? And again, no judgment here. We're all operating from the best information that we have in the moment. And so your parents were operating from the best information that they had in the moment. So what did you learn from your mom? When your mom was really stressed, when your mom was angry, what did she do? What did you learn as a child? What did you learn from your dad when he was really angry, when he was really stressed? How did you learn how to behave? What were your mirror neurons picking up? So in our programs, we talk about limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs are fascinating to me because it's been found that over 90% of our behavior is based on our unconscious limiting beliefs. So you may notice this, parents or people may seem really emotionally triggered at times. And we wonder, why can somebody push my buttons so much? Have you felt like that? Why is there this one person who can push my buttons so much? And what we found is that a lot of our behavior in reaction to that is not based on a conscious thought. Like, oh, I really love that person, or you're not conscious in that moment. Actually, a lot of our behavior in that moment is operating from our unconscious mind. And it's been found that because 90% of our behavior is based on our unconscious limiting beliefs, then we're really operating, a lot of our behavior is operating from those limiting beliefs, especially during highly stressed or highly emotional moments in our lives. So, what is a limiting belief? A limiting belief is something that is not serving you, deeply serving you in that moment. So a limiting belief might be, I'm not enough. A limiting belief might be, I'm all alone. We see this a lot with parents. They think that they're all alone. Again, this is the fabric. This is what's the foundation, what's laying the stage for a lot of your behavior. Another limiting belief would be, I don't know how to do this. Or I've never done this before. And so these limiting beliefs are underneath our behavior. So what I've noticed happens is that when a child is highly stressed, and what's happened to us as adults is we've been children and we've been highly stressed. And so when a parent comes in and they may neglect you. So when you were a child, you may have gotten neglected. At no fault to your parents. Maybe they were busy and they just didn't have the time to spend with you one day. And so you went to your room and you were feeling sad. And in that sadness, you started saying something to yourself. And maybe that thing that you started saying to yourself was, I don't matter. And that I don't matter is now formed into a limiting belief that you now carry with you into adulthood. And so limiting beliefs are really, really important for us to uncover and to shift right now, for parents and for people. So limiting beliefs, why are they so important that we shift these? Because then, from our limiting beliefs, we cause limiting actions in our lives, not really living into our true potential as a person, as a practitioner, as a parent. And then we have these limiting habits that go on and on and on. So these patterns happen really unconsciously. And they happen unconsciously when we parent from our limiting beliefs. And any unsupportive parenting patterns or habits that were passed down from generation to generation. So there are these generational patterns that are being passed down through generations. And we believe that it's our job now to break these generational patterns. Why? Because they're not really serving us anymore. If you are not living into your true potential as a parent or as a person, and you have these patterns, then wouldn't it seem logical that we can break these patterns right now, that you have the ability to break these patterns right now, so that you could really live in your highest potential as a person and as a parent. And so we see this all the time. And this is really when a person is moving from the unconscious to the conscious, when they're starting to make conscious choices. So if you just became aware that your limiting belief was, I'm all alone, it's like a light bulb going off. Oh my God, I've been doing this behavior, I've been acting this way because I felt so alone. And here's this belief that I've been operating from, that I'm all alone. Wow. Okay, how can I shift that belief? And then we help parents and people to shift those beliefs so that they don't have to have them anymore. And we can break these generational patterns and become conscious of the way we'd really like to parent, the way we'd really like to be with our kids, the way we'd really like to be with others in our lives. So what would you really, really like to pass down to your child? What kind of pattern of behavior would you really like to show your child right now? How would you really like to help your patients right now who are parents? How could you really empower them? Because when you break a generational pattern, you create new neural pathways in the brain. So you're essentially reshaping the future of parenting. Remember, we talked about how the brain can grow and change at any time. You can create a new pathway in the brain just by adopting a new behavior right now, by adopting a new habit right now. So these new pathways in the brain are just like, imagine if you had a route to work. So you go to work every day and it takes you about an hour to get there to work. You have an hour commute in the morning. And one day you're at work and you meet a buddy in the lunchroom and he says, hey, I know a way where you could go only I know a new shortcut. I just found it. You wouldn't believe it. There's this street and it'll only take you a half hour to get to work. So the next day, you get on the road and you try his shortcut. And it does. It takes you half an hour to get to work now. And you're amazed. So now that you know that new shortcut to work, which path do you think you're going to take to work now? You're going to take the shortcut. So there are a lot of people and a lot of studies saying that you can create a new habit. It takes 21 days or it takes 40 days to create a new habit. And really, a new habit is created instantaneously. In the moment that you choose the new route, the new habit is created. And with that new habit that's created, new pathways in your brain are opening up, and you're taking those new pathways. And they're almost like cross-country ski trails. They're like trails that you take over and over and over again. And so by ingraining that new pattern in, guess what? You are more inclined to take that new pathway over and over and over again. So you're really reshaping the brain. So why is this so important? It's so important right now because we are looking at a whole new paradigm of parenting. We're looking at a new way that parents can connect with their children so that our next generation has the self-esteem and the self-worth and the good feelings about themselves that are going to empower them and the next generations to come. And we know that in this new paradigm, we have healthy communication, that our children are learning how to care for each other, that we're learning how to care for our children. And we're passing down these models of communication that are really going to empower us and empower every generation to come. So what is this new paradigm? And a paradigm is a system of thought. So before we even delve into this, a paradigm is something that can be seen everywhere. So we know that we've seen the dominant style of parenting. We've seen the dominant paradigm a lot in parenting in the past. And so now with these tools, we're able to shift into this new paradigm, into this new system of thought. And this new system of thought involves emotional intelligence. So what is emotional intelligence? It's talked about so much in our schools, so much in our literature. And emotional intelligence is really the ability to fully feel your own feelings and needs. It's the ability to have a vocabulary to talk about your feelings. You know, I remember when I was raised, we didn't really talk about our feelings. And I didn't have, when I first started doing this work, I didn't really have much of a vocabulary to talk about my feelings. I had about 5 words to talk about my feelings. I knew happy, mad, or angry, sad, confused, and I kind of stopped there. I didn't have a lot of wide range to talk about my feelings. So emotional intelligence gives us this vocabulary to talk about our feelings. Did you know that there's a website with over 2,000 words to describe feelings? Imagine, that's how many emotions you have within you. You know, we tell parents, just feel what emotion, just stop for a minute, stop for 30 seconds during your day and just notice, what am I feeling? What am I feeling? What am I feeling? What are you feeling right now as you're listening to this? What are you feeling? What's the word to describe what you're feeling? Just by your brain going in search of that word, You are developing your emotional intelligence. And that's exactly what's happening with your child. So we can develop a child's emotional intelligence now when we care about their feelings, when we encourage them to talk about their feelings, when we can give words to their feelings. Emotional intelligence is really to be able to receive empathy and support for your feelings and needs. And it's the ability to fully understand and show empathy for another's feelings and needs. And what's really cool about emotional intelligence, what's really amazing, is that research has shown us that emotional intelligence is known to be the most important intelligence simply because all other mental development is based on the strength of a person's emotional intelligence. So, emotional intelligence is directly correlated with social intelligence and brain development. So, social intelligence, what's that? Social intelligence is the measure of one's ability to get along with people. And you may have noticed in the digital age, connection is highly valued because we don't get to see each other as much. And people rely on social media, or they rely on these virtual connections. And so right now we're looking at a future where we really need to work at human connection. We really need to work to have those relationships. And social intelligence is interesting because we don't possess a gene for social intelligence or emotional intelligence. Emotional and social intelligence, they grow and develop through relationship and primarily through the experiences that a child has with his or her parent. So what we know is that emotionally connected moments, they build pathways in the brain between the lower, middle, and higher areas of the brain. And when these brain pathways work together in a coordinated fashion, then a child is able to relate well to other children and adults. And the child is able to feel and give empathy. So, how do we do this? So I want to give you 5 tools to connection right now to help yourself as a parent or to help any of your patients who are struggling in parenting. And we call this the peace process. Now, the peace process is something that is really helping parents right now, hundreds of parents around the world, to shift this paradigm and to really give them a sense of relief and ease about their parenting so that their children, they don't have to use the consequences and punishments. This is an alternative. And this is a way that their children can feel safe and secure with the connection that they have with their parents. So the peace process. We start out with P. P is for paying attention. I'm going to ask you in the P part of this to pay attention to what's going on with your child. So every situation with a child doesn't just happen in a bubble. Children have come from places. They're either hungry, they're tired, they've just come from school. Maybe they haven't been with you all day. Maybe they haven't been with their parent all day. Maybe they just had a really difficult exchange with a sibling. Maybe they slept funny the night before. There's so many things that can happen that with a child that really dictate how they're feeling in the moment and what you're going to see in the moment with that feeling. So the first step is to pay attention. Now just pay attention. And the key here in paying attention is without judgment. Can you come to a situation without judgment? I remember a friend of mine, she walked in on her young daughter. I think she was 4 at the time. She walked in on her 4-year-old daughter, and her daughter had just dumped all of her new makeup onto the floor. And my friend had just spent hundreds of dollars on her makeup, and there it was on the floor, cracked open, and the compact was cracked on the floor. It was broken. And her first reaction for this child was to yell, was to get really angry, right? And so instead of getting really angry, can you just stop in that moment and just pay attention? Pay attention to where the child came from and what's happening. So paying attention without judgment. If she were to judge the situation and say, oh my God, you're so stupid, how could you drop that makeup on the floor? That's judging the situation. Paying attention is different. Paying attention without judgment is, wow, look at what happened. And then you're assessing the situation. So paying attention also means that you need to pay attention to what's happening for you in that moment. So if she's feeling angry in that moment, she can pay attention to her anger instead of expressing her anger right away. So paying attention without judgment. The second tool of the peace process is the E, and the E stands for every child's feelings and needs. So all behavior that a child is having, or actually that you're having as well, is simply a crying out, an attempt to get a core need met. Children, all of their behavior is simply an attempt to get a core need met. Now, children have so many needs, and we do too. All of our behavior is simply a calling out an attempt to get a core need met. So maybe that need is for acceptance. Maybe that need is for appreciation. Maybe they have a need for attention. Maybe they have a need for autonomy. Just get away from me. That's their need in that moment. And that's what their behavior is going to reflect, that need. So every child's feelings and needs means that you as the parent become aware of what your child is feeling and what they may be needing in that moment. You're just guessing here. I wonder what they're feeling, and I wonder what they may be needing here. So it's getting you very present to that a child has feelings and they have these needs, these unmet needs. Sometimes they're met, sometimes they're unmet. So that's the E part of the peace process. The A part of the peace process is allowing self-empathy. Self-empathy means that you're okay in the moment as a parent with whatever you're feeling. We have all of these thoughts and feelings happening in the split of a second. My child is bad. I can't stand my child. I want to get out of here. There's just a lot of stuff happening in our minds when our children are, quote, misbehaving. So what I'm asking you to do in the A part is just to allow yourself self-empathy. And that means that all your thoughts that you're having in that moment are okay. Just to accept yourself. Oh, wow, this is really hard. This is really challenging. Allowing yourself self-empathy means being your best friend, becoming your best friend. Saying, wow, I understand. This is really hard in this moment. And the moment that you allow yourself self-empathy, you can allow yourself to relax a little bit. So when we can be okay with what we're feeling, saying, wow, I'm really angry in this moment, or I'm having these thoughts in this moment, we don't push them down or shove them away, then it will allow us some relief so that those thoughts don't come out in a later moment, in a later stage, and where those thoughts really are damaging. So just allowing yourself self-empathy. You can have the thoughts right now. Doesn't mean that you have to act on the thoughts, but you can certainly have the thoughts. And wow, I'm having this thought right now. Wow, this is a really hard moment. Allowing yourself self-empathy. And in that moment that you allow yourself self-empathy, I invite you, if you're really triggered by a child, or really triggered in that moment, meaning that if you're angry, or if you're about to hit, find a sensory tool to calm yourself down. So remember, we talked about the front part of the brain. This is the part where we would like to bring that front part of our brain, that reasoning and logical and problem-solving part, back online for you. So when you use a sensory tool, that's a way of calming yourself down and being able to bring that front part of the brain back online. Because guess what? It's the best part to parent from. So where do you think we want to be parenting from? The lower part of our brain, the survival, the fight, flight, or freeze, the middle part, the super emotional part of our brain, or the higher part, the reasoning and logical, rational, empathy part of our brain? Yeah, so the higher part of our brain is what we're really trying to trigger here. So I invite you to play with a sensory tool. And a sensory tool can be anything that ignites one of your 5 senses in that moment to help you calm down. So some people like chewing on ice. Some people like taking a drink of water. My teacher really loved washing his face. His kids would see him and his face would start to get really red. And they would say, "Dad, you're getting angry. It's time to go wash your face." Because they knew that washing his face calmed him down in that moment. It helped to regulate him, regulate his brain. It might be something with motion. It might be jumping up and down. It might be running in place. It might be snapping your fingers. One of mine is snapping my fingers next to my ears. For some reason, it triggers one of my senses that calms my brain down. Everybody is unique here. And I can't tell you what your sensory tool is. You really need to find it in the moment with your child. So I invite you to play with that. I invite you to allow yourself self-empathy and to find a sensory tool that works for you. The next part of the peace process is the C. Much like the A, the C is just for your child. It's care with empathy. So now you're going to care with empathy for your child, and that means to step into your child's shoes. What must life be like in this moment, in this really difficult moment for your child? What really must it be like? Remember, you have 20, 30, 40, 50 years, 60 years of life, maybe 70, 80 years of life experience here. How many years does a child have? So they're just coming into the world, really, even if they're 10, even if they're 15. These are all very new experiences for them. And they're reconciling with their emotions. They're trying to understand what it is to feel this way. And so for us as parents, the best thing we can do is to try to put ourselves in their shoes and offer them empathy. Give them empathy in that moment. That means holding a safe and secure space for them to have the feeling that they're having. Remember, they're having that feeling because they have a need, a core need that is not met. So we're not blaming a child, we're not shaming a child, we're not judging a child, we're not manipulating a child, we're not trying to shut down a feeling here. When you go into a restaurant and you see people crying, or you see a child starting to cry or act out, quote, act out, then everyone wants to shush the child. This is the opposite of that. This is the opposite of that. So you want to allow your child the biggest space of empathy to just have that feeling. Let them know it's okay. It's okay to cry. I remember when I was playing with my son and we were practicing this a lot. And it was during my training, and he was about 3.5 years old, and a friend came over to play, and his friend they had been playing on tricycles, and I think his friend had taken the tricycle from him, and my son started crying, and his friend said, "Don't cry, don't cry." You could obviously see that was how he was being parented, his friend. And my son, in his 3.5-year-oldness, he said, "No, you can cry, it's okay." So this is really that space. It's allowing your child the space to just have whatever feeling they're having. If they're angry, okay, they're angry. And so now, just as you found your own sensory tool for yourself, I'm gonna invite you to find a sensory tool for your child. So this happens in the moment. Some children need to run. Some children need to have soft blankets rubbed on their face. Some children like water. My son really likes the sensation of taste. So I know that while I'm giving him empathy, while I'm holding that space, I'm also handing him a glass of water because that calms his brain down. So in that moment, you're helping your child to regulate. You're not trying to shut the feeling down. You're just guiding them. You're being their emotional coach and you're helping them to regulate in that moment. We need to become bigger as parents and not fall into the emotional trap of matching the emotion, of matching their emotion, but rather give them tools to help regulate themselves. So that's one of the tools in the peace process. And that's the C. And when you get to the C, there's the E, which is exploring solutions. That's the last step. And 90% of the time, over 90% of the time, the solution is empathy. So you may have just already found the solution. But if you want to explore another solution with your child, then that just means that you're going to invite your child to explore a solution with you. That doesn't mean that you're going to tell your child what to do. So exploring a solution is where you both get to come together and say, I wonder, how could we deal with this? What can we do when so-and-so wants your toy? I wonder what we can do here. And you're exploring a solution together. And the child feels empowered because you're exploring it together. So I invite you to try the peace process. I invite you to practice the peace process and to offer it to your patients as well. If you learn nothing else from this whole webinar, the one part that I want you to really, really take on and really take away, and really what I want you to take away here, is the part of just stopping in the moment. So you can offer your patients to just stop in the moment and recognize what they're feeling. Just by that stopping in the moment and being able to just say, whoa, I'm really angry here, and help them to calm themselves down, is one of the greatest tools that will end punishments and consequences for children. It's one of the greatest tools that helps a parent to really become aware and conscious of their actions, and helps a parent to really parent in the way that they know is the best for their child, not in a reactionary mode, but in a responsive mode. So that's the peace process. So true connection, and we briefly touched on this, but true connection happens in the moment that you can have your feeling and your child can have his feeling, and it's authentic. And so Brene Brown, who's one of my favorite researchers on vulnerability and shame, she says that authenticity is where you are willing to let go of who you think you should be as a parent to be who you are. So a lot of us as parents are trying to be these stoic people, or trying to not show feelings, or trying to control our children, when really we have these feelings too. And our children benefit when we show them authentically, wow, I'm getting really frustrated right now. So it's not that we're acting out on those feelings, but we're finding a language, a common language, to express those feelings with our children in a safe and appropriate fashion, where they feel that, wow, I can be authentic with mom too, I can share my feelings. So when we can do this, when you can allow your child the space to share their feelings openly and authentically with you, then we are creating a feeling, a sensation of self-worth that will last a child a lifetime. And you have the most unique opportunity as healthcare providers now, and as parents, to affect how children actually feel about themselves. And what's so fascinating about this is that many studies now are showing that self-worth, or a child's self-esteem, is really directly correlated with their academic achievement, how they test. And a child with a low self-esteem has a higher tendency to be involved in alcohol and drug abuse and crime and violence and depression, suicide, eating disorders, or teenage pregnancies. So we can turn this whole thing around and give kids now the greatest gift they can ever receive, feeling empowered and wonderful about themselves. So just imagine for a moment, just close your eyes and imagine what kind of lives our kids and our patients' kids can now grow up with, having this gift. They will feel safe to express their feelings and stand up for themselves. They'll feel safe to go to their parent with any issue. They will know what empathy is. They'll feel securely connected to their parent. And the energy of empathy can change anything. They'll know what compassion is, how to care for another person. And in our digital age, I believe that this is truly the greatest gift that we can give our kids. So many leaders have been talking about empathy now and why it's so important. And President Obama talks about empathy a lot. And what he says as fathers is that the second thing we need to do as fathers is pass along the value of empathy to our children. Not sympathy, but empathy, the ability to stand in someone else's shoes, to look at the world through their eyes. Sometimes it's so easy to get caught up in us that we forget about our obligations to one another. There's a culture in our society that says remembering these obligations is somehow soft, that we can't show weakness, and so therefore we can't show kindness. But our young boys and girls see that, and they see when you are ignoring or mistreating your wife. They see when you're inconsiderate at home, or when you're distant, or when you're thinking only of yourself. And so it's no surprise when we see that behavior in our schools or on our streets. And that's why we pass on the values of empathy and kindness to our children by living them. We need to show our kids that you're not strong by putting other people down. You're strong by lifting them up. And that's our responsibility as fathers. So this is your time. This is your legacy of peace. This is your time as a parent to step up and to really be the parent that you're called to be. And if you have patients who are parents, if you serve parents, this is their time. This is really what you have to offer them, because our children need you. You're the direct, when you're a healthcare provider, people are looking to you. What do we do? And so in that position of influence, you really have the ability to affect our future generations. And our children really do need you. They need to know that their parents care, that they truly care enough to parent consciously, that they truly care enough to show their kids empathy instead of yelling or punishing their child. You know, Addison Gale said it great. He said, "Power comes not from the barrel of a gun, but from one's awareness of his or her own cultural strength and unlimited capacity to empathize with, feel for, care, and love one's brothers and sisters." So the choice is yours right now, whether you're a parent, whether you're a health professional, or whether you're both. You know, there are staggering statistics right now how we are medicating our kids at a phenomenal rate. And we have the ability right now to change that. So what will you do? What will you do? How will you help parents right now? In their highly acclaimed book, Hold On to Your Kids, one of my favorites, two of my favorite authors, Gordon Neufeld and Gabor Mate, they say that a child must be receptive if we are to succeed in nurturing and comforting and guiding and directing her. Children do not automatically grant us the authority to parent them just because we're adults, or just because we love them or think we know what is good for them or have their best interests at heart. For a child to be open to being parented by an adult, he must be actively attaching to that adult, be wanting contact and closeness with him. The secret of parenting is not in what a parent does, but rather who the parent is to a child. So, my wish for you, if you're a parent, is to be your greatest for yourself and for your child. And if you're a health professional, then my wish for you is to make a choice right now to help your patients with their greatest challenge they will ever face in parenting.
Hi, my name is Kiva Leatherman. I'm the CEO of the Jai Institute for Parenting, and I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation by our founder, Jollette Jai, today. Now, some of you may have really been interested in what Jollette shared with you, and I want to invite you to a very special opportunity to learn how to integrate this work into your practice as an acupuncture professional. You're going to want to go visit the following URL, so get a pen. The URL is www.jaiinstituteforparenting.com/acupro, ACUPRO. So again, jaiinstituteforparenting.com/ACUPRO. Now, you're going to want to do this if you want to learn more about how to join our mission, how to be an advocate for change in the space of parenting, but most importantly, how to reduce stress, increase health, and earn more money as an acupuncture professional. When you visit that page, you'll be invited into a webinar to learn how to actually integrate parenting coaching into your current practice so that you can do all those things that I just shared with you. In any case, thank you so much for taking the time to learn this valuable information. It is our mission to change the way that parenting is done by giving parents new tools and resources for connection and communication with their children.
I hope you enjoyed this free webinar. Please take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel and please share on social media. The world will be a better place when more people know about the benefits of acupuncture.